Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Rushcliffe series. This is the southernmost district in Nottinghamshire and it contains 59 civil parishes of England. And there's some corkers down here. Let's dive in and check one out. Welcome back to Rushcliffe again, people, and to the second of the Cropwell twins. Behind me here, you can see some markings on these railings here. And of course, we're used to those markings by now because that means we're near a canal. This one, of course, though, is disused. You can't see any water there. It's all overgrown. That's the Grantham Canal, and it runs through the parish of Cropwell Bishop. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Cropwell Bishop, Archbishop's land near a rounded hill. This week in Rushcliffe, we're taking a look at the other of the two Cropwell villages. Last week it was all about churches, chapels, schools and former allotments. This week we've got a whole lot more. Now, as we know from previous adventures in the East Midlands, Stilton Cheese can only be produced in Leicestershire, Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire. We've seen a couple of places that are related to it already. However, this place is considered to be the true home of the stuff. This is Cropwell Bishop. Since the middle of the 20th century, this village has been attracting people from far and wide, all coming to have a browse in the Cheesemakers shop at Cropwell Bishop Creamery. With a history that stretches back to 1847, originating in London, the iconic village centre landmark is owned and managed by the 6th generation of the Skailes family. Whilst Cropwell Bishop may be mainly about cheese, don't be fooled into thinking that it's a one-trick pony. Flanking the western edge of the village is the Grantham Canal, the first time we've met the now disused waterway on TVI. Its presence tells of an industrial time long before cheese ever came to the Cropwells. And north of the village core is a huge housing estate built thanks to the area's interest with aircraft. It's a fun one, this, so let's go. Our journey around Cropwell Bishop begins at the Grantham Canal, which flanks the village to the west. Now disused, this canal ran for 33 miles from Grantham through 18 locks to West Bridgeford, where it joined the River Trent. It was built primarily for the transportation of coal. It opened in 1797 and its profitability steadily increased until 1841. It was then sold to a railway company, declined, and was finally closed in 1936. Most of it remained in water after closure in order to supply local agriculture. Since the 1970s, the Grantham Canal Society have been working to restore parts of it. On the other side of the small car park for the canal's towpath walk is the Cropwell Bishop Memorial Hall, the main communal venue in the village, built in memory of all those lost in World War I. It dates back to 1929. The Memorial Hall Committee is currently in the process of rebuilding this on its current site. In front of it is a bus stop and you can reach Cropwell Bishop by using 3 services, the 33, 90A and 92, all of which go into Nottingham. We are of course heading the other way into the village centre, and right at the heart of this rural community is its most well-known landmark. Now, I'm not talking about a church or a pub or anything we usually come across. Nope, instead, I'm talking about the Cropwell Bishop Creamery. The story of this begins in London in 1847 when a small company run by the Skailes family was set up to sell cheese, eggs, butter and other provisions. In 1941, wartime regulations required the cheese-making side of the business through a separate company. So, Somerset Creameries was born. It was primarily based in the county of the same name, but operated a Stilton dairy in Melton Mowbray. In 1949, they acquired this site in Cropwell Bishop. This allowed Somerset Creameries to expand its product range to include such cheeses as cheddar, red Leicester and double Gloucester. It was so successful that in 1973 they closed down operations in the West Country and moved everything here. A few years later, they sold the Melton Mowbray site too and invested the funds here, making it the world-class dairy it is today. It's one of only 6 dairies in the world that's able to produce authentic Stilton under the UK's Blue Stilton Cheese Protection Order. Cropwell Bishop is now considered to be Nottinghamshire's home of Stilton cheese. It's a chapel next. Methodism began here at the end of the 18th century, and early services were held in people's houses. The present chapel was opened on the 16th of September 1842. This is now a listed building and one of very few within the Vale of Belvoir to retain most of its original features. A few steps away we have a butcher's shop, which is currently run by Gary Jowett. A decade ago, this was instead Barlow's Butchers. Next door is a fabulous old building which houses a few local businesses. These include a beauty salon, a hairdresser's and a small cafe by the name of Nice. Okay, so it's not all about cheese here in Cropwell Bishop, there are other things too. Behind me there, you can see the pub, that's called the Wheatsheaf, and the car park of the Wheatsheaf actually doubles as the car park for the Co-op, which is directly opposite there. We are definitely in the centre of civilization here. The Wheatsheaf is the oldest pub in the village, dating back to the 1600s, which makes this a 400-year-old coaching inn. It's still as popular today as it ever was too, and to boot, it's also a Grade 2 listed building. My kind of place then. Opposite the pub is the Co-op, which is a recent addition to the village. This was built on part of what was the Wheatsheaf's car park between 2016 and 2019. That's why there are signs within the car park which state the pub's customers can use it. Despite that, there are also signs pointing potential punters who drive to the rear of the building too, confusingly. Many people consider this next area to be the absolute dead centre of the village. This is where Nottingham Road, Fern Road and Church Street all meet each other. Until the middle of the 20th century, these 3 roads were essentially what the village was. The point is marked by a sign erected for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee and a stone set into the wall of the churchyard, which tells us it was repaired in 1902, the coronation year of King Edward VII. Church Street also has a parish room, another bus stop and a phone box. We'll see the rest of this later, but the church is next on our list. St Giles's Church is the oldest building in Cropwell Bishop, dating back to 1215. In 2015, villagers celebrated its 800th birthday, and decorations marking the event can be found inside the church. It's obviously been a place of worship for Christians for centuries, but this building has always been used for other things too. In the 13th century, its early days, it would have been the safest place to shield from severe weather, house fires and flooding. One more modern and rather quirky thing would be as a launch pad for teddy bear parachuting from the top of the tower. And no, I'm not joking. Fern Road now, where we pass this attractive little garden before we come to the site of an old school. As education goes in Cropwell Bishop, its existence can be traced back to a national school, which is now the parish room. Attendance was restricted to Anglican children, and as a result numbers fell. This, a new board school open to all children, was built in 1878 and was in use until 1961. There was also a post office nearby, run from a thatched cottage that looks straight down Church Street. Rounding off this central section is a surgery, part of the Belvoir Health Group. Now, as far as stuff on the main street goes, that's effectively all there is to Cropwell Bishop. Everything else that we're going to see is kind of to the north of it, within a housing estate, and one of those things is a school, so we're going to make for that next, and we're going to form a loop around the top of the village, around the northern part of the village, and eventually come back to the Grantham Canal. This is a very, very big place though, so it's not just a case of taking a left turn here and a right turn there and we'll be back in 5 minutes. Oh no, this is probably going to take me well over an hour. Stockwell Lane is an interesting street. For a long time it was called Back Lane, and the origin of the name Stockwell is twofold. This was where the village stocks were, hence the first part, and there was also a pond at the end of the lane, which was fed by a natural spring, or well, if you will. Upper Lane off this road is the current Cropwell Bishop Primary School, which replaced the old school in 1961. This is much larger than either of its predecessors, but then again it kind of had to be. In the 1950s, 60s and 70s, Cropwell Bishop was undergoing a rapid expansion for several different reasons. Using a linkway, we're on Springfield Close. This building is Rawlings Court. It's a retirement housing complex built in 1988. Springfield Close's name is a reference to the actual spring that would have supplied that pond. There were several around Cropwell Bishop at one time, but now they're all dry as a result of geological disruption caused by gypsum mining in the area. You'll have noticed we're back to Church Street, where there's a small second shop and a cul-de-sac called the Maltings. Oddly, Cropwell Bishop has never had a malt house of its own. The nearest was in Cropwell Butler. Next up we have a second pub, this time the Checkers. Until 2017 there was a third pub in the parish. It was called the Lime Kiln, and it was on the road to Kinnelton. That though has now become a nursery. Cropwell Bishop had several other pubs that closed long ago too. St Giles's Way marks our entry into the vast swathe of residences at the northern end of Cropwell Bishop. This street, named after the church, was built in 1973, along with several other roads on an estate constructed by the Bell Housing Company. This was where the Workman's Site Office and Material Store were located. Well, I'll tell you one thing, this housing estate is very different to the main road because it's very, very, very quiet. You can hear a pin drop in this area. I suppose this being a cul-de-sac, you know, a dead end, is one reason why you can hear like the birds and nothing much more than that, because, you know, no cars are coming rushing past. But it's such a difference to just stand, you know, literally a couple of 100 yards away from a main road and hear absolutely nothing. You know how much traffic was flashing past on the main road. I'm sure you saw it all coming past earlier in the video. But yeah, that just goes to show how different a place can be when you step away from the main road. Now, even though this is a dead end, we can continue the walk, because here you can see it's all open plan. You can walk through onto another street here, and on the right hand side there's a path which goes up through like a massive elongated garden type open space. We'll walk through that and back onto another street which will loop us back round towards the Grantham Canal. Have you got all that? Hopefully. 70 years ago none of this estate existed. Weirdly, the need for housing in Cropwell Bishop had nothing to do with the creamery or the mining of gypsum. It's important to note that not all of this sea of housing was built at the same time. This central part is 1970s, but we're heading towards Hoveview Road, and that was built over a 20-year period, beginning in the 50s. It was built for workers of an Avro aircraft factory at nearby Langar. At its peak, over 800 people were working there. It had closed by 1968, but of course all this housing remains. Let's follow it back to the playing field. So here we are then at the playing field, a nice way to finish this walk off. It's located around the back of the Memorial Hall. As well as being the largest open recreational space in the village, many events organised by the Parish Council and the Memorial Hall Committee are held on this field. For example, in June this year, to mark the 80th anniversary of D-Day, the field played host to Camp Cropwell, which saw a range of vintage cars, military vehicles and other wartime relics descend on the village, courtesy of the Military Vehicles Trust. The iron beacon here is often lit too on special occasions. And here we are back to the car park near the Grantham Canal, where we began just over an hour ago. And that's the other Cropwell complete. On the drive out, I passed the Creamery's packing factory, which is on the left-hand side as you make towards Cotgrave. It really is well worth coming to Cropwell Bishop if you like cheese. I do like it, but I'm afraid the smell of Stilton makes it a type I simply can't stand. I'll see you next time, folks, elsewhere in Rushcliffe. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.